Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Sam here to break down the NFL running backs for Week 6 main slate on Sunday. Got a lot of games, some interesting running backs to get into. Not as many elite studs on the slate because McCaffrey's still out, assuming he's still out. Zeke's still out. Dalvin Cook might miss, so got a lot of stuff to get into on this slate. But before I do, if you're new here, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, turn notification bell. All that stuff really helps me out. Had a lot of growth throughout NASCAR, NFL, NBA season, continuing to grow with NFL. As of this about an hour ago, I'm at 300 subscribers, so thank you guys yesterday for hitting that subscribe and just keep doing that. Now I want to get to 400 by the end of the month. Well, in 30 days, so I guess not by the end of October, but around this time in November. I want to be at 400, so thank you guys so much for that. If you want to get more of my content, you can always subscribe to my Patreon for only $10 a month. You're going to get articles for every single position every single week, along with rankings for cash and GVP for each position. You're also going to get all my injury notes, so you'll know on Sunday who's in, who's out. You're going to know what to do, what adjustments need to be made, who's a better play, who's not based on injuries. If you want to get, or you're also going to get articles for every single Thursday night, Monday night, Sunday night, and I guess now Tuesday night showdowns. So for every single one of those, you're going to get an article for that as well. And there's a few more things over there as well. So be sure to check that out. I'll put the link below. But let's get into the running backs, and we're going to start out with James Conner, who honestly I'm really not as interested in James Conner as I am with the rest of them, but he's kind of like a maybe at this point. He's going to be going up against the Cleveland Browns, and he's 7,100, which I think is a little bit pricey, but nothing too big of a deal. When you go look at the offense versus defensive line matchup, it is going to be a slightly negative matchup for James Conner. That is because of the Cleveland Browns' run defense is just very good. Like, Pittsburgh has a good offensive line, but the defensive line for Cleveland has just been absolutely great this year. Myles Garrett is just, in my opinion, the defensive player of the year, number one player at this point. Obviously, stuff can change, but Larry Ogunjobi is out as of now, so that could be a little bit of a hit to that defensive line, but it's still nothing that it's like, oh, that makes James Conner a really good play. Right now, the line's at 15. They are favored, and they are at home, so that's really why I'm interested in James Conner. He is a home-favored running back. The Browns are kind of a tough matchup against running backs. They have been all year. Running backs just haven't really torched them too much. James Conner, now he's known as like a bell cow, and I guess he is, but to be honest, he really isn't getting as much volume as I'd like him to. He's averaging 16.3 carries on the ground, along with 3.5 targets through the air, so just about 20 touches per game is what we're expecting out of James Conner, which is fine. That's great. I mean that's really good. Like that's good. But for 7,100, you can get guys for a little bit cheaper or a little bit more expensive that are in that same amount of usage rate in better matchups. But I think James Conner is not going to get a ton of ownership, and when you have home favored running backs who pretty much get all the usage on the ground that are lower owned, I think those are always guys to target. And it's a somewhat high total game as well at like 50. So on a week where there's not a ton of just like ridiculously high total games. So James Conner, I do believe, is fine. Jonathan Taylor is up next at 6,400, going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. This is the spot I want to attack Jonathan Taylor at. We go look at the offense versus defensive line. It's going to be a positive matchup for Jonathan Taylor. The Cincinnati defensive line is not good. They've been the 12th worst rush defense in the league this year, so this is a spot I want to attack. They are favored, 45.5 game total. It's not the highest game total, but they are favored. I expect the Colts to be ahead of this game most of the time, so they should be playing from ahead for the most part. So Jonathan Taylor looks to be in a good spot. When we go look at the usage, you are going to see that Jonathan Taylor, ever since week 2, we're not including week 1 because that's when Marlon Mack was there, has averaged 17 attempts on the ground per game, along with 1.75 targets through the air, so that comes out to around 18.75 touches per game. We saw him get 3 targets last week. Only 12 carries on the ground was a little bit concerning, but they were playing from behind from that game, and he had the market share of the carries for sure. I think Jordan Wilkins had 1 and Hines had like 2 or 3, so he had the majority share of that, so definitely was fine for me there. And in the game they should be playing ahead, we should see Jonathan Taylor. I probably see about 17, 18 carries on the ground against a rush defense that really can't stop the run. And DJ Reader is also out for the year, so that's a big loss to them, their best run defensive lineman. So I think this is going to be a really, really bad rush defense going forward. And Jonathan Taylor looks like to be in a really good spot at only 6,400, like him in both cash and tournaments. James Robinson, the undrafted rookie sensation, $6,800 against the Detroit Lions, who have been bad against the run this year. We go look at the offensive versus defensive line matchup. It's going to be positive, and Jacksonville offensive line is really not that good. So if you're ever getting an offensive and defensive line match that's positive for Jacksonville, you know that rush defense is not good. As it shows, they have allowed Detroit has allowed the most points to running backs this year. They have been the worst team against the run all year long. This game has a total of 52.5. It's the second highest total on the slate. The Jaguars are not favored in this game, but it's like a close line, like only a 3-point underdog or something like that. So it should be a relatively close game. I don't think he's going to get phased out. And we have seen James Robinson still get usage when the Jaguars are playing from behind, because that happens a lot, quite frankly, this year. They've been playing from behind a lot. So when we go look at the average usage, he's averaging 14.6 carries per game, along with 4.4 targets per game. We've seen in week 5 and week 3, those were games we were playing from behind for most of it, and he saw 7 and 6 targets. So we could see a little bit more targets in this game. So definitely through the air. I like him at $6,800 against a team that really isn't good at stopping the run at all. I think that's a really solid price tag, someone I do want to get to. Derrick Henry's on the cover this week. He's really the only stud that I honestly might be in play, and he's only $7,300. Oh, Aaron Jones. Never mind. There's 2 of them. But Derrick Henry is $7,300 against the Texans. Last night against the Buffalo Bills, we saw Derrick Henry get 21 touches, I believe, and that was a little bit low from what we had seen earlier this year, but I think that's 21 touches. And like they said, if you were watching a game, the announcer was talking about how they were just limiting him a little bit coming back. They wanted to get some other guys in just because they didn't want to just put Derrick Henry back in after not playing for like 2 weeks, just full force. We know what Derrick Henry brings to the table. We go look at the offensive versus defensive line. Tennessee is one of the best offensive lines in the league, period. It's going to be overall positive matchup for the Tennessee Titans here. This is not right. I mean, I haven't gotten to put the line in for that game yet since it's not available yet because the Titans just played yesterday, but they're going to be favored against Houston. I can guarantee you that. And it's going to be a somewhat high total game. I just put it at 50, and that's probably where it's going to be around, somewhere around there. So you're going to have a running back who's favored. Houston's allowed the 5th most points to running backs all year long. So now you're getting Derrick Henry, who's just an absolute beast. We know with Derrick Henry, October on starts producing. He starts to just go off, and we saw him do that last night. I mean, not go off, but he got 19 points, 2 touchdowns. And that was good against a good Tennessee run defense, or a Buffalo run defense. So I mean, now he's going up against Houston, who's just bad. They've lost Bernard McKinney for the year. So this is just a spot where Derrick Henry should be able to feast. So if we go look at the usage, he's averaging 25.25 carries per game. I mean, look, he had 19 last night, but 31, 25, and 26 in the first 3 weeks. I expect that to come back, especially when they were blowing him out and it just ran a bunch of James McNichols. It probably would have gotten to about 25 if it was a normal game. When we're seeing the targets, he's getting usage in the pass game a little bit at 2.5 targets per game. I mean, it's not great, but it's better than what we used to get from Derrick Henry, which was like 0. So that's good. He's still averaging 27.75 touches per game, which is by far the most in the entire league. And I definitely want to get there if Derrick Henry. I think he's just a great play. Cash, I never want to say play Derrick Henry in cash, but I don't see a lot of top end running backs in cash this week. And I'm like, yeah, we need to play them unless like Cook plays. So I think Derrick Henry ends up being a really good play there. Definitely like going to Derrick Henry this week. Antonio Gibson for the Washington football team playing against the New York Giants. When we go look at the offensive versus defensive line matchup, it's going to be a negative matchup for him. One of the 3 negative matchups I'm going to talk about today. That's a little worrisome, and that they are not favored in this game somehow. It's just because the Giants are at home. It's a 44.5 line, which is a little bit worrisome as well. But Antonio Gibson gets usage in the passing game. He was a pass catcher in college. If you follow on fantasy football Twitter, you hear people say all the time, oh, he only ran the ball 3 times in college. He's not going to be a good running back in the league. Well, that's wrong. He's been very productive this year. Giants have the 13th worst run defense in the league, so that's a good spot to attack them with. I mean, they're pretty much just a team to attack everywhere. When we go look at the usage for Antonio Gibson, he is averaging 11 carries per game, along with 3.4 targets per game to 14.4 touches per game. We've seen Antonio Gibson get to 13 carries this year. We've also seen him get to 5 targets this year, so he's in that sort of range, and he's only $5,500. I don't know if I'd want to go there for cash, but he's definitely someone in tournaments if you're trying to pay up for more receivers and some lines that Antonio Gibson's a cheaper running back to get to, as well as the next guy we're going to talk about. But I think he's a good salary saver and definitely someone I'd like to get some exposure to. Now, David Montgomery is the other cheap running back that I kind of like this week, and I think he's a lot better for cash than David Montgomery. He just seems a little bit safer for me. Going against the Carolina Panthers, we got an offensive versus defensive line matchup that is going to grade out very, very positively for him. The second most positive matchup on offense versus defensive line for me at the moment. It is a low-scoring game at 43.5, and they are not favored. But David Montgomery's actually been getting usage in the passing game recently. We're seeing him since Tariq Cohen's left. He's only averaged 10 attempts on the ground, but they have been playing from behind. but he's seeing an average of 7 targets through the air. So that's what's impressive to me. If he can get a few more touches on the ground, which I think he will, I don't think this is going to be a game where they're going to be getting like blown out. We saw him playing from down like 2 touchdowns to Tampa last week. So like he wasn't used as much on the ground, but he's still going to use it in the passing game, which is a little bit surprising to me. We didn't see that at all last year. We hadn't seen it up till now. It took Tariq Cohen getting hurt for that to happen. So at 17 touches per game, I think they're a little bit safer, and especially against the Carolina Panthers, who are the 3rd worst rush defense in the league right now, a spot that you want to just attack. So David Montgomery is definitely someone that I think has a lot of upside at his price tag. I think he's okay for cash if you want to get there. Probably not going to be my cash route this week, but I think you can get there for cash if you need to. It's still David Montgomery. Like, you just don't trust the guy. He's just never been good. But man, Carolina's rush defense is bad, and I just like attacking that. Definitely gonna have exposure to him in tournaments for sure. So, Aaron Jones is next, and honestly, the only reason I'm putting Aaron Jones on here is because it's Aaron Jones at $7,600. I don't really like attacking them Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the ground, but I will note that Vita Vea is out for the season, which is just a massive hit for Tampa. He is one of the best run defenders in the entire league. I mean, if not the best, he's up there with the elites. This game is a total of 51.5, and the Packers are favored. So the Bucs have allowed the 25th worst rush defense in the league, which is really bad. Like, if you're going up against them, so really good for them. But without Vita Vea, I'm like, okay, they probably won't be as good. Aaron Jones gets a ton of usage in the passing game anyway. He didn't play last week, but he's averaging 16.25 attempts on the ground and 5.75 targets through the air. That's not including that 0 right there. So he's getting usage in the air. So Aaron Jones, definitely someone to look out for. I mean, we've seen that, you don't usually attack Tampa with running backs that just run it up the middle, but they've been vulnerable to guys like Alvin Kamara, and Aaron Jones is a very similar running back to Alvin Kamara. He's not as good in my opinion, but similar style, very elusive back, and someone who can catch the ball out of the backfield, run a lot of screens with him, so they've been vulnerable to those. So I think Aaron Jones, especially without Vita Vea, is definitely someone I want to get some interest in. I don't think he's going to be too highly owned this week because they are playing Tampa, and Tampa's known as a good run defense, so definitely someone who might go a little bit under owned this week, so I definitely want to get some exposure to him. Next one we're going to group together because they're on the same team. Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison. This really all comes down to if Dalvin Cook plays or not. Whichever one plays, I want to play. Alexander Madison's $7,200, but I don't care. I still want to pay for that in this system, in this offense where they just run a ton. Dalvin Cook got hurt last game, hurt his groin, and we're hearing from coaches that it's like a maybe he's going to play or not this week. Maybe he's not. We don't really know. We go look at the offense versus defense line matchup. It's going to be positive, of course. The Atlanta Falcons are the 14th worst defense against the run, so not like one of spots to to play running backs there, but definitely a spot to attack. That's not going to hurt you or anything. Dalvin Cook got hurt. I don't think he's going to play because look, they're playing this week against the 0-5 Atlanta Falcons. I mean, they're 1-4. I guess it's a big game for them, but not really. And then they're going on a bye next week. So like Dalvin Cook playing just doesn't really seem like worth the risk. I'd expect him to be back from when the bye week is over, though, for sure. So that's what I'm thinking with Dalvin Cook there. So if Alexander Madison plays, I want to get there. Last game, we saw them honestly have both a ton of carries. Like Dalvin Cook at 17 and Alexander Madison at 20 because Cook got hurt. He did come back, though, but Alexander Madison still saw 20 carries. And that should just tell you enough that if Dalvin Cook misses, this guy's going to be the bell cow. We've seen it before. This guy's really good. He could start on a lot of teams in the NFL, like New York Jets. Like, you need a running back really bad. Like, I'm just saying, like, this is a spot where Alexander Madison is just a really good running back against Atlanta. I think it's a good spot. They're favored. It's the highest total game on the slate. So whichever one the running back starts, that's who I want. If Cook misses, I don't care if Madison's 7,200. I'm playing him. If Cook's active, I want to play Dalvin Cook. So I think they're both great plays. Just got to know which one plays. We'll know more later in the week. It's only Wednesday. We'll know more, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So be sure to look out for that news. Todd Gurley is the next running back I will talk about. 6,300, going on the opposite of that game against Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota rush defense is bad. We go look at the offense versus defense lines, can be positive. They do rank 16th against the run this year for fantasy points, but their run defense grade in PFF is horrible, so definitely a spot I want to attack. I mean, they're not favored in this game, but we saw Todd Gurley still get some usage last week when they were playing from behind against Carolina. We saw him get 14 carries on the ground, 5 targets through the air. He's starting to get some usage in the passing game, averaging 18.4 touches per game. So I do think Todd Gurley has some relative upside. He's got the touchdown upside. He's getting all the carries inside the 5-yard line for them. So he's definitely someone that I really haven't been high on this year in season long. But I mean, like I'll play on Draftkings he's getting the usage in the red zone, and that's what matters at this point. We want touchdown upside, and Gurley does present us with that. Tournament only option is 6,300. I wouldn't go there in cash just because I don't think the volume's secure. I mean, Brian Hill and Ito Smith are still getting some usage in that running game, so he's not really a true bell cow. It's like an 80-20-20 split. I mean, it's just, we can go look at the, it's actually less than that, 55. He's averaging only 54% of the snaps per game, but when he's in the game, they're using him. Like when some of the other guys are in, they're not always using him, so he's actually getting the usage. Mike Davis, Carolina. McCaffrey, I believe, is eligible to come back from the IR this week, but I don't think he is. I don't see why they would at this point. Just, make sure he's perfectly healed before they get him out there. They're doing fine. But, I mean, if McCaffrey comes back, obviously Mike Davis is pretty much just out of play. But $7,000 against the Chicago Bears. I can't believe Mike Davis is $7,000. That's wild, man. He's just been balling out, playing really, really good for Carolina. The running backs don't matter crowd. This is their like, the guy in face of the cover. Their cover boys, Mike Davis. So, this can be a slightly negative match for the offensive line, but it's pretty much neutral. It's not something I'm really too worried about. They are favored, 43.5 total lines, a home game for them. The Bears haven't been great against the run. They haven't been bad against the run either. 19th worst rush defense. I mean, it's a little below average matchup, but nothing that is too worrisome for me. But the thing that Mike Davis, it just makes me love Mike Davis, is his average of 22 touches per game. He's averaging 7.5 targets per game and 14.5 on the ground. And 10 targets last week. We've seen him get 8, 9, and 10 in 3 to 4 weeks he's played, 6 the other week. Dude's just been just a usage monster, and I just want to keep going after it. I really don't mind. He's a home favored running back. Total's kind of low. I don't know if he's a fringe cash play now because he's 7,000, but he's just been so productive that I just don't mind. I think he's a fine play. I'm gonna get some Mike Davis. Getting the usage, matchup's not horrible. They're favored, they're at home, so Mike Davis definitely someone to get to. And then we'll close this out with Ronald Jones. Now, this is dependent on if Leonard Fournette plays. Now, Leonard Fournette was active last week, but he was a emergency-only option. So we're going to have to see what the week goes on Leonard Fournette. Honestly, I think Fournette probably comes back this week, so that kind of kills Ronald Jones here. But if Fournette's out, Ronald Jones is a lock in cash at 6,000. We go look at the offensive versus defensive line matchup. It's going to be a positive matchup for him on the ground. They are not favored, but it's 51.5 game total, and this game's expected to be close, so it's not a game where I'm just too worried that they're going to get down so much and they're not going to get used. Now, Green Bay's allowed the second most points to running backs this year. They've been bad against the run, so Ronald Jones is definitely someone who, we saw him tear up Chicago last week, had a great game there, so he can definitely do this again against Green Bay this week. When we go look at the usage, the 2 games without him, without Fournette, he's averaging 18.5 carries per game, along with 7 targets per game, so averaging 25.5 carries per game, and that's the second most out of all our running backs I've talked about. So Ronald Jones looked to be a very, very productive guy in this offense when Fournette's out. I just think he should be a guy anyway because I'm really not a guy. I don't think Fournette's good. So Ronald Jones, if Fournette's out, is a great play, but be sure to look out for that. But yeah, I think that's really all I got to say on these running backs. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, turn on notification bell. All those things really help me out. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and maybe we'll make some money this week.